the reality of getting a divorce from this person, it's all you feel like the biggest reason why, and I believe why people stay married for so long time because they don't want to believe they made a mistake.
This is what goes into our mental health because a lot of times we come into relationships not knowing really much about the person that we're coming in that relationship with. We don't know what their deep rooted issues are. Hi, welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About This. It's the new year. I'm so excited. And the reason why I'm excited right now is because I got my first film producer on the podcast. His name is John Wayne. John has been in the film industry for nearly 3 decades as a producer, writer in the film and television industry. His films include Red All Over, Ebony Hustle, and Plugged are currently available on various platforms as Tubi, Peacock, Amazon, Vudu, Fox Soul, Ruko, YouTube, and Hoopla. So his films are out there, so there's no excuse for y'all not to find it. Uh, also, with combined, he combined 10 million plus verified streams. You're 10 million streams?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. A lot of people are watching your films. That's amazing. And you can find the music soundtrack and scores for these films on major music and social media platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome John Wayne. John, how you doing?
I'm going good. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, John. I'm doing a whole lot better than I did yesterday. I was exhausted yesterday. Just running around trying to get some things accomplished. I got a little bit of things accomplished yesterday, so I'm happy about that. You get 24 hours in a day, so you got to get something done in them 24 hours,
Yes,
rather
you
than
do. We get
just,
the same as everybody else, so you got
yeah,
to make it happen.
you got to make it happen, even if and it don't, even if it's not nothing big, like,
Mhm.
a lot of times I might have to just go through my emails, or I might have to do some editing on my podcast, or just something, to
Mhm.
make me feel like I've done something for the day, you
Or just
know
living your life.
or just living life.
That's
Yeah.
enough by itself sometimes.
Yeah, we got to make time for ourselves sometimes. I had to
Mhm.
I had to, figure that out too, because sometimes you can get so caught up in what you're doing
Yeah.
and you forget about relaxing sometimes.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough about me. We're going to talk about you. The first film director. I'm so excited to know that you have all your films across all these platforms. But I want to dig a little bit into your personal life now.
Mhm.
I want to talk about, before we get into your films and your writing and producing and everything, I want to talk about your personal life, where everything all began for you. First of all, where were you born? Where are you from?
I'm originally from Chicago. I
Okay.
live in Houston. I came to Houston about 20 years ago to work on a show for Fox. And after I did that for a couple of cycles, I realized I didn't want to be cold anymore. So I then went back to Chicago. I
Yeah,
love Chicago,
it's get
but I
cold.
do not like to be cold.
Yeah, me either. Although I'm used to this type of weather, but I would rather be somewhere where the weather is like 75 all year long.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I heard that
For
was
the most
California.
part, that is today.
Yeah.
We have our period of time. I tell people Houston has two different weathers, hot and not so hot. And so we're in the not so hot part of the season. So it's kind of
Okay.
cold and icy today. But in about 2 weeks, so it'll be back to 80 degrees outside.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were born in Chicago. What part of Chicago? South side?
South side. I'm from South side, low end. Yes.
Okay. All right. Y'all
Mhm.
got good food out there too on the south
Yes, we
side.
do. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Keith Lee even said we got good food.
Yeah, because I be watching those food. I be watching YouTube all the time. I'm a foodie person. I love watching the food channels. And I like
Mhm.
following all the the people who travel around the world and eat all these different foods. And some places they stopped in Chicago. I was like, oh my God, when I get to Chicago, I gotta go to this place, this place, this place.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. When I go back, that's part of one of my I had to put in my planning to go back and go to certain restaurants. You know, those comfort places that make you feel good and things like that. So I try to make sure I don't try to hit all of them because I'll be big as a house, but I try to hit a few of them just
Right.
so and get that feeling, that comfort feeling back.
Right. Uh-huh. Yep. So you was born here. So tell me about your childhood living in Chicago. How did you get started in where did you find your interest into wanting to make films?
Well, that's not was my initial plan. My initial plan is that I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to
Okay.
study medicine with geriatrics. That was my focus because my plan was this. I figured by the time I got out of medical school, that would be most of the baby boomers would start to retire.
Mhm.
And baby boomers are money spenders. So I was going to open up these communities, put my name on it, where they would live at.
Mhm.
Then I would flip that into a political career because they would vote for me because they knew who I was. That was my plan. I didn't have any particular political agenda, but I figured I would hire somebody to do that. But that was my plan. But what happened was that the year that I was in going to undergrad, trying to figure out what medical school I was going to go to, this production manager called me and said that I had left an answer machine message about working on this indie movie. And I was like, no, I didn't. She's like, yes, you did. We went back and forth. And at the
Mhm.
time, I was a manager. I had just lost my job. I was a manager at a self-parking garage and I had just lost a job. And so I figured, well, it seemed interesting. I'll go. I went there. It's for a second assistant director's position. I went there with a shirt and tie on,
Mhm.
talked to the first assistant director. In about 5 minutes, he realized I couldn't help him do nothing because I know nothing about movies.
Right.
So she called me back like a week later, said, I can't give you that job, but would you be interested in being a production assistant in the art department? And because the guy that had hired, he was from Canada and he had a driver's license. Truth be told, my life was suspended at that time and I shouldn't have been driving nowhere. But as in all things, you always say yes and you figure it
Mhm.
out later.
That's
And
right.
so I worked on that movie. Ironically enough, just as the way the universe is, it was director George Tillman's first film out of film school. Director
Mhm.
George Tillman went on to do Soul Food, Men of Honor, everything, but I didn't know him from anybody else. I was just working on a project. After he did that project, I went to work with him and his partner on some other stuff. And eventually I partnered with this other guy who didn't go to film school either. He went to like this community workshop doing music videos. We started doing music videos in Chicago. During
Mhm.
that time, there was nobody doing music videos in mid of America. It's either New York or LA. There was not, that's just the way it was set up.
Yep.
And so we started doing music videos in Chicago, and people was like spending like this is back right during a hype William period of time. People spend 20, $30,000 on music videos for songs they weren't even on the radio because they just
Mhm.
wanted to have a video. This is before MTV and all the platforms that they just
Social
wanted to have
media.
a video. So people would
Mhm.
spend money. But I
Mhm.
also was shooting in film. We shooting in film, like on film cameras and stuff like that. So I've in my career, I've seen that I just have been in the right place at the right time, and I just kind of capitalize on opportunities.
Mhm.
After I did that for a little while, I went to we did a video for this one producer, and he come to me, had a conversation. He was like, he was starting this company, and he wanted me to come on as be a publicist.
Mhm.
And I said, I don't know anything about being a publicist. I think you can do this. I end up staying there and eventually become the director of international A&R. I ran his office in the UK and Japan. The guy's name is Steve Silk Hurley. Steve Hurley is notable for doing the old school, new school music for the Tom Jordan Morning Show.
Mm.
That's his claim to fame. But he also is one of the first producers to cross over from the house tracks to the pop tracks in Europe. Nobody had ever done that before. He's Grammy nominated now and everything. But during that time, he would was starting his company. I went to go work for him.
Mhm.
After his deal was over with, and he decided to make a transition from his company. Since I had worked with all the labels and everything, I knew everybody who commissioned music videos. I knew everybody at the label. Music videos are not about how great of director you are. It's really about I realized this about networks and record labels and things of that sort. Although they traffic in creativity, they're corporate entities. And so these
Mm.
people get PTO, they get time off, vacation, and benefits and everything. They don't want to do nothing that's gonna mess their job up.
Mm.
And so if I go to them and say, hey, I want to do the music video, they got to make sure that I'm gonna bring something back that they can show to their boss that week and say, hey, this is what I've been doing versus like, I don't know what's gonna happen. They're gonna lose their job. So it's
Right.
about finding people that they can depend on that's competent, that's going to make sure they get. So I've done about 200 music videos, not because I think I'm a pretty good music video director, but it's because I was dependable.
Right.
People knew that I was going to come back with something that they could stand behind and make something happen,
And
and so
consistency.
Yes, and
Be
consistency. You
consistent.
know, a lot of things about being a creator, what a lot of creators miss is the business side of it. You know, I'm a creator who's creative, and a lot of times people they just focus on the creative side and they don't really focus on the business side. And so I try to find a balance between being the creative guy of this is what we need to do, and also the actual reality side of what we can do based off the budget or constraints. That's
Mhm.
not something a lot of creatives have because they just see the creative part. They don't really see the business part of it.
Right. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, because most people just look at it now, and like you said, going back to like music, people don't realize that when they come into the music industry, they don't realize it's a business too.
Yeah,
It's 90% business and 10% show.
yeah,
You got to know the business part of it because you're working for a business. And
yeah.
a lot of people coming into industries not really realizing that. They just want to
I
perform and show their creativity.
and I get that because I want to do that, but you're right. 90% of what I do is meetings and talking to people and working out deals. I I only spend a very small part of actually physically producing like day to day on the set. The rest of the time is just business, trying to make things happen, try to
Mhm.
make connections, make things, that make sense. I spend more time doing that, and that's not the fun part.
Mhm.
Back in the day, I used to manage artists, and uh, artists would come to me, and I always try to set realistic aspirations about what they want to do. And I said, this one group came to me one time, this rap group, and they was
Mhm.
like, John, we want you to help us get on everything. I said, okay, fine. I said, let's just in 6 months. I mean, what do you see like reality? What you want to be? And he's like, they
Mhm.
want to have it. They want to be on BT. They want to be on tour and everything. I said, that's possible, but not probable. I said,
Right.
let's do some stuff like get your publishing right. Let's copyright some of your songs.
Right.
Let's do some realistic stuff because what happens is I get a lot, even to this day, I get artists who have songs on the radio and they're trying to figure out why they ain't got no money. I said, well, did you send the paperwork out? They be like, what paperwork? What are they gonna send the check to?
Right.
What are you gonna send a check to? If you go get a job, the first thing they have you do is fill out the paperwork out. And if you don't fill the paperwork out, you're not going to get a check. It's the
Right.
same thing. It's
It's
a business. And if
Yep.
you don't do the proper foundation and paperwork, you are not going to get the results that you think.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times, a lot of artists just don't, they miss that part. Because if you don't do it now, you're gonna have to come back and do it later. And
Mhm.
it's harder later when you try to prove that that's your money. When
Mhm.
people get the money and they already know, okay, that's probably his money. But if you didn't claim it, now you got to go back and claim it. It's harder to get that money. It's so
Mm.
much.
Yeah, because you ain't got nothing documented. You gotta have a
No,
paper trail,
no paper trail.
and
And a
that's
lot of
strange.
times they
It's
don't do
strange
that.
that people it's strange how we don't look at entertainment as being a business. We just think
Mhm.
it's all entertainment. It's just like a 9 to 5, like going to a 9 to
Yeah,
5 job, like you were saying. You gotta go through, well, I don't know about drug testing, but you gotta go through. I know when you get hired for a regular job, they drug test you, you fill out your paperwork, your W-9, your W-2, and all of this. And a lot of people don't realize that they just think it's performing.
yeah, yeah. It's like I get people a lot of times. I get a lot of I don't know. Within the last couple of years, people decide they want to do a movie. They ain't never done a movie. Ain't never shot nothing. So they go do a movie. And I come and I say, oh, this looks really good. And I said, well, what kind of paperwork you got? We ain't got no paperwork. What you mean you ain't got no paperwork? Ain't got no artist release. It is harder to get people to when you all sitting there talking and you're having a good time, you're doing a movie, nobody have a problem. When they're kind of talking about splitting money and what people feel like they deserve, total different conversations. I've
Mm,
had some really great movies that come across my desk to try to help them get distribution, but we couldn't do nothing about it because people wouldn't sign the paperwork. Oh, I feel like I should get this. I feel like I should get that, or I don't, it is
mm,
harder.
mm,
Have those difficult conversations at the beginning
right.
before you do anything, regardless of what you feel like what it's going to do. Have those now because if you wait till later on, it's a much harder conversation because people feel entitled. It's like somebody coming to you and saying, when I win the lottery, I'm gonna give you some money. Well, how much money you gonna give me?
Mhm.
Because if you win $1 billion and you come to me, give me $10,000, I'm gonna feel like, well, man, that's all you're gonna give me is $10,000. They said, well, now you didn't really do nothing. I bought the ticket. The same thing with movies. Somebody said, "Yeah, when we get the money, I'm gonna give you some. Well, how much you gonna give me? Well,
Mhm.
we'll work it out. When that time comes, here you go. I'm gonna give you $1,000. $1,000, you made $1 million. Why
Mm,
can't I? Now it's a problem.
mhm.
Work those
Mhm.
problems out now before you get to that point.
Mm. That's important. Very important. Very important. Now, when it comes down to your filming, so that's how you got your way into the door.
Mhm.
You were just basically doing a lot of you were a dependable person, first of all, and you was coming with something consistent. Um, Now, how did you actually lock in to becoming to working on your first film
Okay.
and streaming it and having it out there?
So when it comes to this industry can be very pigeonholed. When I first started doing music videos, I wanted to do commercials,
Mm-hmm.
agency commercials, and they told me that music video directors can't do agency commercials because you work in 3 minutes and commercials is 30 to 60 seconds. So I had to go out and talk to people, find businesses and things of that sort that allow me to do commercials, real decent commercials. Then once I did that, I went back to the agencies and said, okay, I can do commercials. And they said, okay, fine. When I wanted to do a feature, and you wanted to get like institutional financing, you had to get what they call a completion bond. And a completion bond is pretty much guaranteeing the investor that they're gonna get their money back. It's an insurance policy.
Okay.
And but the way that you get a completion bond is you have to have done a movie.
Mm,
But if you have never done it, so it's like that catch-22 thing. How do you get one when you get the other?
right.
So what I did was I sat down. I'm a real advocate. If you sit down and really kind of think out certain things and just kind of really take the emotion out, you can kind of figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I went to record labels and media companies and say, look, I can show you a way to put your music in front of people who traditionally would never listen to your music.
Mm,
Because if you go to iTunes and you like country music, you really only listen to country music. You're not really looking, for any other genre. So
right.
what I did was I found the social issue. I put we took all that music, original music around it in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to get somebody. At first, my plan was I talked to a lot of people, and they all said no, not because they didn't want to do it, it's because they didn't understand it. It's like
Right.
I don't understand movies like that, so I don't really know, so I don't want to do it. Which I get that. So
Right.
I did find somebody who said yes, and they said okay, fine. When I tell young guys all the time, when people invest in your project, they're investing not in your project, they're investing in you.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel like you can take whatever you're trying to do, they feel like you can do this. And so I found somebody who said yes, and we started to do a movie. We did this movie. I This is the first Red All Over is the first wide release. Before I did Red Over, I did two other movies that we had. Because I come from VHS tape. You do the movie, put it on VHS, go
Mm-hmm.
sell it to mom and pops, go sell it on the street corner, everything. I come from that. But Red
Mm-hmm.
All Over was my first wide distributed movie that I did.
Mm-hmm.
When I did Right All Over, right after I finished and everything was all in the can, I got divorced.
Mm-hmm.
Divorce is a very debilitating thing, and
Been there.
I couldn't function enough to really get it done. All my friends and other peers was like, man, you need to hurry put that movie out, and you need to do it. And it just sat on my hard drive for a couple of years. And
Mm,
even when I got a distributor, one of the distributors who would come to me about distributing it, even when I signed a deal with them, once I got all to get myself to get them all deliverables, it took a year, and I had to sign another agreement because it took a year for me just to kind of get myself together to push me to do it
mm,
because it was just debilitating,
mm-hmm.
you know. And I just couldn't creatively for those couple of years. I really didn't do a whole bunch of creative stuff. I did a
Mm-hmm.
lot of writing and stuff like that, but not a whole bunch of stuff that kind of really moved my career because I just kind of deal with that and custody and stuff like that. So I couldn't do it. Once I got past, we actually got a divorce and everything. I felt a little bit regenerized and I was able to produce more stuff during
Mm-hmm.
that time. But it was I don't put that on nobody because divorce is very hard because you think about you determine you made a decision to pick this person out of all other people in the world and you
Mm-hmm.
decide to be with this person and then when you go through divorce even if they don't meet it or not they turn into somebody it's like I don't know who this person is
Mm,
because they got people in their ear you got people in their ear and I remember I told one of the attorneys that my ex-wife but I said let me tell you something. I said, you helping us in this process right now. I said, but you're gonna be gone. I
mm-hmm.
said, we're gonna have to deal with the repercussions of whatever happens here. I said, so let's kind of like think about what's important from that aspect instead of focusing on I need to get this, you need to do that, because we still need to live and raise our child afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately these emotions will subside or they should subside, and then we can kind of move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to keep that really in my mind when talking. I talked to one of my god sisters, and she told me that when you go to divorce, Because a lot of people make the mistake. They go through divorce and they start telling everybody business. All of a sudden, don't do that.
Mm,
Find one, two people that you want to talk to and
mhm,
tell them what you need to do. Because if not, every time somebody sees you, you're like, oh boy, here comes John telling me these. Nobody wants to hear that. They don't
right,
care. They don't
right.
care. They just
Mm-mm,
like, oh Lord, look here. And
mhm,
on the outside, you don't see that. And now, and years has passed, I'll be like, I can see how it is. Because when people come to me, but they probably be like, oh God, I don't really
mhm,
about that.
mhm.
My
Yeah.
father told me when somebody asks you how you doing, just say how you doing, because they don't care.
Mhm.
They don't
That's
care.
true.
They
They
really
don't.
honestly don't care. They just being nice. They're just being social.
That's
So
all. Yep.
once I was able to get past that, I was able to, really start going back into producing, really pushing that creative inner engine into full speed.
Mhm. Now, back. Let's go back a little bit. Now, when you was going through your divorce, uh, how did it affect you emotionally? Did you go through any type of therapy or anything before you decided to get back into focusing on the movie career?
I did go talk to a therapist before we had got divorced. We were talking, we were going through couples therapy and everything.
Mhm.
And so the woman who was helping us is the one I went and talked to. And you, I had to, I didn't get married and have a child until I was 35 years old. So I
Mhm.
waited. And
Okay.
so I spent a lot of time with myself. And I
Mhm.
spent a lot of time with figuring out what my career was. A lot of young people, a lot of people, I grew up with, they had kids younger. And so they had to like pretty much grow up with their kids and raise their kids. So they really have a time to really kind of figure out who they were. It's an important step in being an adult, but everybody doesn't get that opportunity. And I did.
Mhm.
And so when you spend a lot of time with yourself and you're very clear about what you want to do, um, the reality of getting a divorce from this person, it's all you feel like the biggest reason why, and I believe why people stay married for so long time because they don't want to believe they made a mistake.
Mhm.
They don't want to believe they made a mistake. How
Mhm.
could this is so personal to me? This
Mhm.
is so connected to me. How is it that I could have made this mistake? I
Mhm.
can't be wrong about my heart and how I feel.
Mhm.
And the thing about it is, it's just not your heart, it's the other person too.
That's true.
And so they making decisions about that too.
That's
And
true.
sometimes you meet people at points in your life to where, depending on where they are, you bond.
Mhm.
Sometimes people trauma bond or whatever they
Mhm.
both going through and things of that sort. And you meet people. I met my ex-wife during a time where I had just got a relationship with somebody else,
Mhm.
and she had a miscarriage, and that was
Mhm.
very kind of debilitating because I didn't have any kids. And so I wanted to be married.
Mhm.
I was ready. Guys have to be ready, regardless of what women think. Men have to be ready. They got to be in their mind. I want to get married. And
Mhm.
so she came to me at a time where I was like, I'm ready.
Mhm.
I'm ready.
Mhm.
And so I was open to it. I was open to whatever it was, and I put myself all the way out there because I was
Right.
open to it. And so if you do that, you say to yourself, I didn't thought about this. I didn't said no to other people. I didn't,
Mhm.
brushed off other relationships, and I'm saying yes to this person. So I couldn't. This can't be wrong.
Right.
And so people tell you, as long as you've been married, half the time you've been getting a divorce.
Mm. Mm. Well, you
You
really
know,
don't know much about the other person that you're getting in a
no,
relationship with. That's the thing.
you
You
really
don't know
don't.
you don't know their deep rooted issues also. Sometimes we jump into, and this is a good conversation too, about this is what goes into our mental health because a lot of times we come into relationships not knowing really much about the person that we're coming in that relationship with. We don't know what their deep rooted issues are until
Yeah,
later on, until you get into the relationship. And that's
yeah,
when things start to, you know, um, but this is a really good part of this conversation that we're having right now because a lot of times you just don't do, and that's why you shouldn't blame yourself. I
yeah.
always tell people don't blame yourself for what happened. If you got a divorce or your relationship didn't work out, don't blame yourself
Hmm.
because sometimes two people have deep rooted issues that they never resolved or and it can affect the relationship or the marriage. So
Hmm.
but yeah.
You got
how
this
did
one
how did this
person.
aff- how did this affect you had a daughter or a son?
Yes, I had
You
out
have
of a
a
relationship. We produced a daughter. She's 16 now. She
okay.
stays with me. And when I got first got with my wife, she had a child too. So she is like 33
Okay. So how
now.
did this
So
affect her?
which one, the younger or the older one?
Well, you had two children with your wife?
Well, my wife, FY, she had a child already
Oh,
that
she
was
already
younger.
had a
Yeah,
child.
yes.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right. And you raised that child.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, so how did that affect her?
The older one or the younger one?
The older one.
So the older one, I guess all right to the degree because she still lived with me. So I
Okay.
guess,
All right.
I guess it's
Well, let's
not
talk
that
about the
bad
young.
because
Let's talk about the younger one first. Then, how
the
did?
younger one, she lives with me too. They both live with me. The
Okay.
younger one, her mother and father, that's all she knew was a stable relationship. And
Okay.
then when we separated, she couldn't understand it.
Okay.
She couldn't understand. So I had to take her to therapy too, because she just couldn't. The reality of not being in the same house and reality that we were not the team,
Right.
that's puzzling to her.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Because my world, on some level, you kind of I feel like you could tell what people stifle in their life, where they get stuck at
Mm-hmm.
if you have a conversation. So I think on some level she got stuck
Mm.
at that moment. She
Right.
got stuck because she was doing okay, and then all of a sudden her reality changed,
Mm.
unraveled in front of her eyes, and now she has to spend some time figuring out what does that mean, who I am, how do I fit into this thing, how do I make that work. Now I got two rooms at two different houses.
Mm-hmm.
I got two TVs, two sets of clothes, two.
Mm.
I got all this stuff, and now I'm trying to figure out, when I used to have everything in one place,
Mm-hmm.
how does that make my world? How do I deal with these people? These people are not the team per se anymore. They're kind of a little bit at odds with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Who do I believe? A child's fundamental thing about who they are is that they should be able to trust what their mother and father say above anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And when
Mm-hmm.
you cannot decipher between those two, and you're trying to determine, that takes you away from being a child and understanding who you are in the world. Because now your understanding of you is tied to your parents. And if they not on the same page as they were before,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean about me? What does it say about me and where I'm in my life?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She had to
Right.
figure that part out,
Right.
and even going to a therapist helped to a degree, but that's something that she had to figure out. And some people get stuck right there. They don't know how to go past that.
That's
And I
true.
hope, in me and trying to mentor and encourage and everything, that she gets past it. But every now and then she'll say and do something that tells me that that part is never really healed, because she gets hurt too in the
Right, right.
process.
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes kids they blame themselves for what
Yeah.
happened too, you know. They think
Yeah.
it's their fault. When especially when they're young and like you said, they don't understand it, their life just transition suddenly and they don't understand what happened. I think that kind of affected my daughter because she was the oldest and my son was the youngest.
Hmm.
So my son didn't really understand as much as she did because she was the oldest. And
Hmm.
she kind of saw what was going on. Like you said, one minute we were together because I went through a divorce too back in the year
Hmm.
2000. It's been a long time ago, but
Hmm.
and then you start to see the reaction in their behavior.
Hmm.
I think my daughter, she acted out a lot after the divorce. She was having a lot of, problems or things of that nature. But, she got that's when you got to sit down with the kids and you got to talk to them and let them know, this is has nothing to do with you. We still love you as parents. You know what I mean? This has
Yeah.
nothing to do with you at all. But yeah, I can relate to what you're talking about because I went through a divorce too, and I think it affected my daughter more so than it affected my son because he was still
Hmm.
young. You
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah. It
yeah.
became part of his reality.
Mm-hmm.
Moving forward, it was just part of his reality. He really didn't, think
Right.
about it one way or the other. As a her,
Right.
she saw the change.
Right.
She could see the physical, the mental change in you, him, and then her whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that is she's sitting there like watching this on the sideline while you are going, having issues between each other. She's sitting there as a spectator,
Mm-hmm.
like, what is going
Going on?
on?
What's going on
What
here? I
they
mean,
doing?
right. One minute we all in one house, the next minute I'm going to this house,
Yeah.
and then and this, what is going on here? Nobody ain't said nothing.
Yeah.
you
Yes.
right. Uh-huh. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now let's fast forward a little bit now that we talked about that.
Hmm.
Once you got through the your divorce and everything, and now you're getting back into your film career.
Hmm.
Okay, when did you start to pick up back into the film career once you got past going through your divorce and you know your therapy and all trying to emotionally getting through all that stuff?
So Red Eye Oval was eventually released in 2019. That's when it
Mm-hmm.
eventually came out. And so once that came out, it opened up a lot of opportunity and doors that, that was closed that I didn't know about, or, situations that just was not there until the movie came out. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people talk about doing the movie and got scripts and everything, but it's a totally different thing when you have a finished product and you can go and talk to people and have conversations. And it's also a different conversation when people can just go and Google you versus I'm gonna just send you a link.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go sit down with somebody and I say, hey, well, they want to know about me, I say, you really pretty much can Google me and, get whatever you want, interviews, social media, whatever the case may be. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a different conversation. So people are a little bit more serious about the conversation. I'm a firm believer in that everybody gets the opportunity to sit at the table at least once in their life.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to the table, you got to have something to say.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have something to say. And if you don't have anything to say, then your opportunity probably is going to close right then and there, and you have to be quick on your feet because this business is made to say no. They're made to close doors and keep it very close about who they let in.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get that opportunity, you need to be able to maneuver in that situation to where you get something out of it. I've been in pitch meetings where I've come to pitch something and I got an idea and I can see the executive not liking it. And I have to be quick enough to try to figure out a way to fix the pitch at the moment to make them say yes. Most people want to say yes. You just got to find the right thing to make them say yes,
Mm-hmm.
and I've saved a lot of pitches and opportunities because I was able to pivot. Some people don't pivot like that. And I'm a very creative person to the point to where I can think of stuff right off. You come to me with an idea, I can pretty much figure out something right there. I can tell you how much I think it's gonna cost, what it's gonna take to do it. You need to have all those balances in your mind at one time. And if you don't, you'll miss out on a lot of opportunities because you kind of swayed from one side to the other. Just like
Mm-hmm.
we talked about earlier about it being a business, it truly is a business.
Mm-hmm.
When I was working at the record label, I was on this panel one time, and this is back when people were talking about trying to get out of their contracts because they signed bad contracts. And I said, even though the audience got set, mad at me for saying, I said, look, this is a business.
Mm-hmm.
If I get somebody a contract, it's going to be slated toward me. It's up to you to spend a couple of $100 to get an attorney to say, hey, let's point out these issues. If I give somebody a contract for something, I'm gonna write it to a way that I feel like is beneficial to both of us. That I'm trying to look out for their interest too as mine. But their focus is their interest. And so if it's something in there that you don't like, then you come back and say, hey, can we change that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is the old saying? Closed mouths don't get fed.
Yeah,
You have to
that's right.
speak up and you
Mm-hmm.
have to say things. I'm trying to create a situation in a generational wealth for my family and for my the things people I care about. And you should be too. And so the only way you can do that is that you have to understand what you're signing. So when you do later on, it won't be I didn't know, it was because I'm really informed. There are some deals that I get in with people and I'm well informed of what I'm getting into, that it's not exactly what I want, but they're
Mm-hmm.
all stepping stones to something else greater. They're all building blocks to something else greater. And you have to understand why you're doing things. When
Mm-hmm.
people come to me with projects, I equate them in two different ways. That's the child, they like children. So it's the
Mm-hmm.
child that you have in your that can't leave out your gate. They got to
Mm-hmm.
stay in front of your porch. You want
Mm-hmm.
to look out the window and watch them all the time. Then that's the child that you send to the store to get your cigarettes and your lottery tickets, who are
Mm-hmm.
always on the other side of the street. What child is this?
Mm-hmm.
When you got a project, what child is this? Is this the one who can play in the street, or this the one you keep close? And
Right.
depending on how you answer that question, will determine where we go with this project, or how we market this project, or how we produce it,
Mm-hmm.
because they all mean something. Every idea you come up with is not golden. Some things are just stepping stones to other things.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes artists get so hold and tight on their ideas that they hold it so long
Mm-hmm.
that eventually it's outdated itself and nobody ever going to use it. I had this guy come to me years ago with this stage play he had. Really good idea. And I told him, I said, look, I know a streaming platform who, pay for it. But he didn't want to give up any percentage. He wanted to own everything. I said, look, If you go to a millionaire and tell him, hey, show me how to be a millionaire, he gonna probably say no. But if you go
Mhm.
to him and say, I know how I can show you how you make some more money, then they'll probably be open to it.
Mhm.
So I'm not trying to get the whole nickel. I'm just trying to get part of the nickel. Stop trying to take the whole nickel.
Right.
Spread the
Right.
love out.
Right. Right. Right.
You know,
Exactly.
make it to where it's beneficial to multiple people. If I
Mhm.
do a project and I give back into some of the artists, when I go to promote it, they're going to promote it effectively because they're benefiting from the back end. But if I
Mhm.
go and just kind of do that, they're going to put out one, two times, but they're not going to really push it because they already got paid and that's pretty much it. But if
Right.
I'm showing them that if you promote this, you gonna continue to eat too, then
Mhm.
that's a different conversation, you know. So
Mhm.
we gotta everybody want to eat today, but you gotta eat tomorrow too.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
That's the spirit of collaboration and making it beneficial to everybody.
Exactly. That's true. You know, it's funny you say that because even with the podcasting, I remember back in the day, people before all this social media and stuff came about, artists, because I did a lot, I used to manage artists back in the day too. Um, and back in the day, I remember where people would love to come on to a podcast or get some kind of promotion without charging. Now today with social media, everybody wants to get paid for an interview. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to pay you to come on my platform, you know, so to give you free promotion. If
yes,
anything, it should be the other way around. You
yeah,
should be paying me. But
yes.
nowadays, everybody want to get paid just to come on and talk about, you know, I'm giving you exposure. So why would
Mhm,
you want to, you know, and that's the way it is. And technology has had a big effect on that, you know, nowadays. Now everybody who's already at that level of success wants to get paid to come on your podcast.
mhm. Even
I'm
with
like,
people who are not that level of success, the thing about social media has exaggerated people realistic ideas about who they are.
mm-hmm, that's true.
And you'll see like on some social media, somebody got 30, 40,000 followers. But then when you actually look at their posts, they got maybe the same 15, 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what benefit is that? The whole reason for social media is to get people to do a call to action.
You're
You know,
right.
so every social media person that I got, they're real physical people. So when I
Mm-hmm.
go to ask them to do something, they go click on a link or whatever. These are physical, real people.
Right.
I can see if you at a million, you at 999,000, you need to push to a million. Okay, go buy you a few followers to push over to a million.
Right.
But if all your million is not real,
Right.
what's the point? I don't see the benefit in that. And, you know, so
Right.
social media it keeps people this false sense of what reality is.
Yep.
You know, it's just like with voting. If somebody go to somebody and they running for office and they say, hey, give me some money, and I get 100 people give me $10. But
Mm-hmm.
then I go to 10 people to give me $100, they still only got 10 votes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'd rather get the
Yep.
$10 from the 100 people because that is 100 votes.
Right.
And people
Exactly.
don't see that. So all they concerned with, well, I got $1 million. I said, but you 10 people, what is that gonna do you? That's not gonna they only can
Exactly.
vote. They supposed to only vote once. They only can vote
Right. Right.
once.
Right. Right. That's true. It's true. You see, you know, it's a lot of false sense of reputation on social media. You know, like I'm like, because I had a guy who came to me and he said, "Yeah, I would love to come on your podcast, but I gotta charge you." And I was like, "What? Charge? What?
Mhm,
Why are you charging me? And I'm giving you free promotion."
mhm,
I said, "I don't need you that bad now.
yeah.
You might as well go on down to the next podcast that's going to do that for you because I'm not going to pay you."
But so you know what? I look at it. This is the way I look at it about that. I do a lot of product placement in my movies, tons of it.
Mhm.
The focus mostly is I focus in black businesses.
Mhm.
In the past, what I would do is that I would send a script to an agency, and the agency would find somebody who could pay the fee.
Right.
During the pandemic, I said, you know, I want to do something else different. I want to do something intentional. So I
Mhm.
started reaching out to black businesses, particularly business of color,
Mhm.
and who have good products and services and good social media interaction and everything, and help to promote their stuff. You
Mhm.
know, not charging them exorbitant amounts of money to put their stuff in the movie to
Right.
promote them. Because I only can reach so many people. But
Right.
if I got 10 to 15 people who have products that are integrated into the story, and we go do a follow campaign. I'm putting the trailer and the other little clips on their website. Now these is 10 to 15 other people, audiences that don't know nothing about me, who would never think about me, now looking at my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're now, participating. So now we're collaborating. I'm helping their brand grow. They're helping
Right.
my brand grow. I'm getting the clicks and streams.
Yep.
Everybody is benefiting from that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
Yep.
promoting a Black business, a Black product that is something that they can tangible, that they can order online or go to the store and get it.
Mm-hmm.
Something that they can have. And it's just like with Ebony Hustle Ballistic Protection, which is movie is about to come out in at the end of February.
Mm-hmm.
There is a company that I worked a couple of times with called uh Black Health. It's a vitamin company of a Black company, a husband and wife in Atlanta. They actually manufacture vitamins that you can actually go in Walmart and buy.
Mm-hmm.
Black Pro Health. And in the movie, there's a scene where these two people are having an argument in the park, and
Mm-hmm.
in between them having this argument is the logo,
Mm.
the big logo. So you can't. It's integrated into the story. When you look at the story, you see it's all integrated into it.
Mm-hmm.
Now people are saying, well, what is Black Pro Health? What is
Mm.
that about? Now I'm Googling that. You go to their website, there's a link to the movie on their website.
Mm-hmm.
See how everybody
Everything.
benefits?
Yep.
We
Mm-hmm.
all
Yep.
benefit from that,
Yeah. And that's what it's about.
I got a movie that I'm producing and directing next month in New Jersey, in Orange, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about the global mix. There's actually a league called Global Mixed Gender Basketball where men and women actually play basketball together.
Mm-hmm.
And they have 9 teams around the country, and the league is run by Master P. And each of the 9 teams, a celebrity owns the team. So, like the one here in Houston, Monique and her husband owns it. The one in New York, Ice T owns it. Master P runs the one in New Orleans. Trick Daddy runs the one in Miami. So, Tiny runs the one in Atlanta. So they all own it. But the movie, it's called Balance. It's loosely based on how the league got started. But there's a lot of product placement in there.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of it, from clothing, from shoes,
Mm-hmm.
variety of different things of Black companies
Mm-hmm.
that I intentionally talk to say, hey, let me help you promote your brand. And I
Mm-hmm.
integrate to the story to where it's seamless, that it's just happened to be there, or they're eating cereal and
Mm-hmm.
doing things like that. These are things that people normally do in life and in movies, And so I was very intentional in trying to do that, and I make it a point of doing that because I know that other people don't give them the opportunity to shine like that.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And that's what that was one of the things that went through my mind. I was like, you know what? In order for everybody to eat, like for instance, you see these celebrities who are already at a successful level. Okay. Reach back and help somebody else who haven't gotten there yet. Like wear their brand, wear a shirt. It's all about, this is what I talk about when we say that, Black people, we all work together and we all feed each other. It shouldn't be me just buying your brand or me
Mhm.
just buying, brands that's not supporting our community. You know what I'm saying? I think a part of giving back is reach down and wear somebody who has a brand, who wear it in a movie scene or something like that. One mouth feeds the other. And
That's
that's
right.
the way it should be. It shouldn't be about me just buying, okay, you want me to purchase your brand? You purchase something from me, purchase a pair of socks. I don't care. Purchase a beanie, whatever. It don't have to be, you don't have to spend a lot, but it's one hand wash the other.
Yeah,
It's not about just you making money and not me making money. I have a family I got to feed too. I got to
that's
eat
right.
too.
That's right.
So that's what it's about. But yeah, yeah. So take me back to your films. Now you produced 3 films, right?
I have a total of 7 films. 3 of
7 films
them,
altogether.
yes.
Okay. All
Two of
right.
them were out that I did back in the day. We're not gonna talk about them movies.
Okay. We're gonna talk about the ones that's
Yeah.
doing a
So
thing
three
right
of
now.
them are that I produced or directed are in a wide distribution at this moment. So there is Red All Over. Red
Mm-hmm.
All Over is a story about gun violence, but it tells both sides of the issue. A lot of times when there's a gun shooting incident, The person who does the shooting is the pundits on TV usually demonize this person, but most young people don't get up and decide they're gonna shoot somebody. There's a story behind why that person did that, why they had the gun, you know.
Mhm.
And then there's the other side of the person who got shot. Why was they there in the first place? What brought you to this particular point?
Mhm.
So Red All Over kind of tells the story of how those two worlds met, how
Mhm.
the junction was created, and what the aftermath of what happened in those two particular things. You know, it follows this young boy named Red and the life that he had. His mother's a recovering addict, his father's an alcoholic. You
Mhm.
know, those things not an excuse to why he
Mhm.
did it, but he's also being bullied by a guy at school. Just so many things. And a lot of times, especially when it comes to mental health, people don't look at those signs, so they ignore it because they just don't really want to spend the time doing it.
Right.
And his situation is the factor of if somebody was just paying attention and just
Mm.
some resources and some place where he felt comfortable going to,
Mhm.
maybe those things wouldn't happen.
Mhm.
Maybe that the person wouldn't have got shot in the movie. Maybe
Mhm.
so I try to tell like both sides of
Mhm.
the gun violence issue. The other movie, Ebony Hustle. Ebony Hustle is about an ex-stripper turns private investigator.
Mhm. I saw that
So
last night. That was a good
you
movie.
saw the second version,
Oh, that's the
Ebony
second version?
Ballistic. Yeah, there's
She's
a original one, Ebony Hustle that's available now. The
okay.
distributor came to me and said that they wanted a movie about a woman who's a cougar and they liked, young guys
Mhm.
and a kind of Foxy Brown thing. So Ebony Hustle is really a merger between what they wanted and what I felt like I could do as a filmmaker. So
Mhm.
this Ebony is a strong black woman who knows exactly what she wants and what
Mhm.
she wants to do, and she's not really some pushover. Just like every other superhero, in this case, urban superhero, she has a weakness. She likes young guys. That is her
Mhm.
flaw. And
Mhm.
so, although she's out there, normally what she does like people send out to do investigations on workers fraud and workers comp fraud and things of that sort. And so, in the process of doing that, she meets a woman who says that, "Hey, I need for you to help me get my daughter. My
Mhm.
daughter went to a concert to see this guy named Caleb Truth. Caleb Truth was an ex-gangster rapper turned pastor. She
Mm.
went to the concert 3 months ago and she never came back. And I need for you to go do it." And Ebony's like, "I don't do missing kids. You need to go to the police. Like, I can't,
Right.
they won't listen to me because this guy is really famous and successful. So I need somebody to go in and kind of figure it out." And so do a serious thing. Ebony decides to go do it and bring her back. So it's a lot about drug trafficking.
Mhm.
It's a lot about parents and a children's relationship with each other,
Mhm.
and then just a lot of fun. It's a fun movie about those worlds intersecting.
Mhm.
Plug is about two guys who, which I produced this movie,
Mhm.
about two guys who uh running from a murder rap from West Memphis that come to Houston. And the
Mm.
thing about karma is that although you feel like you might get away with it, eventually catches up to you. That's
Mm.
basically what it's about.
Right.
That movie, when it came out this past June, was number one and number two for the first month on Tubi.
Mm. Wow,
It's
congratulations.
yeah, a lot of people saw that that's looked at that movie, and we got a lot of accolades for that. It runs a lot of festivals.
Mhm.
All my movies, they all I do a full festival run, a lot of film festivals, things like that. But Plug was really taken really well.
Mhm.
So I got Ebony Hustle, Ballistic Protection, which is the second installment is coming out.
Mhm.
It is a same thing about Extra Return Private Guest. This time she has a love interest in this particular movie, and it's based around basketball. So the main character is going to this basketball combine for, ironically enough, GMGB, the Global Mixed Gender Basketball League, which is the league I'm doing a movie for.
Right.
And the manager is trying to make the guy a guinea pig and make him take these sports enhancement jobs to ensure that he gets into the league. And so Ebony deals with that. I have another film that's coming out later next year called False Prophets. False Prophets, it's about a woman who's running a Ponzi scheme in her father's church.
Mm.
Adina Howard is actually in this particular movie. She did a really good job of portraying the character she did, and we did this is probably one of the better pictures that I've done in a while. I
Mm.
have two documentaries coming out. One is about Tulsa and Black Wall Street that'll be coming out later this year, and then another project called Ball in Abroad. It's a documentary about when basketball players go overseas to Europe and China to play sports, so about
Mm,
sports. So it was pretty much shot entirely in China a couple of years ago, and so it'll be coming out. So that and a slew of other stuff
mhm.
since that time, since 2019, when I can kind of get my head back on and focus, I've
Right.
been, really pushing forward to try to make some stuff happen.
Wow, you've been busy, boy. You doing your
I'm
thing.
trying over here,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
On top of that, everything that I put out has a full music soundtrack.
Mm,
I want all the rights to all the music, even the composer soundtrack. We put everything all original because I
mm,
think because that's my background in music.
right.
I try to use their music to draw emotion to stuff to kind of really push people to do things,
Mhm,
and also to show filmmakers how to monetize their products, not just with streaming, but with money with music too. And a lot
mhm,
of times they miss that monetization because they don't really understand the business of how music works. So I
mm,
work with a lot of young filmmakers when they're doing a project, say, hey, look, this is what we could do, and this is how we can move your stuff forward. I
mhm,
realized a long time ago that I can't direct everything. Direct is it's emotionally intensive,
mm,
but I can produce a lot of stuff.
mhm,
So I'm more willing to work with filmmakers. They come to me with their products as early on as they possibly can
mhm,
and really kind of help them figure out a way to really kind of maximize the audience they're going to go out there,
mhm,
monitorizing everything they possibly can and
mhm.
maximizing their budget to get to what they need, done. Make sure they do the paperwork,
Right. Do the paperwork first. Don't
do
miss
the
that.
paperwork,
Yeah.
and to ensure that when it's time to deliver to the distributor, that they have all the things that they need. Because I've seen a lot of great products that's really good, and they just couldn't make it to the finish line because they didn't have the paperwork.
Mm, mm. Well, that's some good information. I hope the audience is paying attention to because, like you said, it's 90% business, 10% show. You got to have that paperwork, that paper trail. Definitely got
Yeah.
to have that. I learned that years ago when I was managing a few acts and the first before we even got started, I
Mhm.
had a contract, had a lawyer, had a contract drawn up and let them look at the contract and let them take it to their attorney or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. And if like you said, if there's any changes that needed to be made, let me know. Don't tell me at the end of, but that didn't work out. That's a whole nother story. But anyway,
But you
you know,
know what? Even though it didn't necessarily work out, I'm sure you learned something from it. Life
I
is about lessons.
it
And I
is
learned
about
more
lessons.
things about my mistakes than I've learned about my successes. And
That's true.
artists have to remember that. So they get something that didn't work out and they all bummed out about it. What did you learn from that?
That's
Don't do
right.
that again. I've learned lessons in contract. I forgot to put something else in there or I didn't make this clear. Learn every single time. You have to learn.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That is so true. And I learned to have an artist packaged and ready to go. I ain't investing as much time as I did before. Well,
Mhm.
I'm not into managing anymore, but I just realized that, sometimes you could put more into something than that person would put into themselves. Cause I felt like I was the artist. I
Mhm.
felt like I wanted it more than they wanted it.
Mhm.
I was going out borrowing. I actually borrowed a plane at the airport. I went to the stores. I would borrow clothes from the stores for my artists, and I got the music on the radio, and took them to the MCA records. I did all that stuff, and then I was like, you know what? Then it came to a point where they didn't understand the business part of it, and they didn't want it as much as I did. So I said, I'm not going to waste my time,
Yeah.
energy, and money into something that's not
That's a
totally.
hard thing. Managing is a lot of it's a lot
It's a
of
lot of work.
it's a lot of work, and I hate to use this term. It's a lot of babysitting too.
It
You know,
is. It's
and you have
babysitting.
to
Yep.
really just kind of like you can't have an artist that you wanted more than them because then they
They won't.
don't they don't see the value in it because they feel
Right.
like, oh, this is just the way it's supposed to be. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, it's just not. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not. That's just not the way it works. When somebody really care about you and they really care about what they're doing and they put their passion to it, they're going
Mm-hmm.
to do 115, 20%. And it's not about the money. It's about they want you to succeed.
Right.
And when you do it too much, when you don't make other person responsible in a relationship, that's what any relationship, they take
Mm-hmm.
advantage of the situation and assume that that's what you're supposed to do. Well, you're doing your job you're supposed to do. I was like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but this is a team.
Mm-hmm.
No team can work without every part of the team doing their part. And if
That's right.
your part is to show up,
Mm-hmm.
do the songs,
Mm-hmm.
do all the things you're supposed to do. And if you don't want to have, you want to half step, do that. But you
Mm-hmm.
want me to do my job too? I don't. How does the math? Young people say the math ain't mathing.
The math ain't mathing. Yeah. I mean, I would never forget. I had a meeting at MCA Records. I had a,
Mhm.
R&B group at the time, and one member of the group wanted to show up separately from the other members, and I was
Mhm.
like, no, we supposed to be all doing this together. You shouldn't be taking a train while everybody else is in a car, and then you get to the I get to the record label, and they bring some of their homies that they trying to put
Mhm.
on too. So I said, wait a minute. I said, now this is making me look bad because first of all, y'all ain't even make it yet. How you gonna put somebody on and you ain't
Yeah.
even get on yet?
Yeah.
Some people get that part of the music business backwards too. You cannot. I can understand wanting to reach back and help somebody, but you got to get there first before you can reach back and help somebody.
What did
You
they say
know,
when you get on the plane? Put your in the event of emergency, put your mask on first
put your
before you help
mask on.
somebody else. That's right.
Right, exactly. So that was the end of that relationship, and and I was like, you know what, and I was like, man, we was just close. We was just close. But it was
Mhm.
a learning lesson, like you said. You learn something from everything, that you go through. So where could your films be? Let the audience know where they can see your films. They need to know that.
My stuff is pretty much across. If you Google all of them, from Red All Over to Plug to Ebony House, so they'll pretty much take
Mm,
you to all the platforms. On most major platforms, from Amazon, Tubi, Freevee, they're pretty much everywhere. So you can
right.
just Google it. As far as my social media, all my social media is the same across all platforms. John Wayne S the third, John
Okay.
Wayne SIII on every single platform,
Okay.
from Twitter to Instagram, to TikTok. They're all the same. I try to
Yeah.
make sure to do that. So
Yeah.
people type in, if you Google John Wayne S the third, I hate to sound like that, but if
Right.
you Google me,
Right.
you'll pretty much get everything there is about me.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know because it make it easy for people to find you. You don't
Yes,
want
I don't
to
want to make it hard. I
make
try to
it
tell artists all the time, stop
right.
making your Instagram tudu fruity the artist and then the fruity art. Don't do that because people gonna be like, I'm when people don't know what to do, they do nothing.
Right.
When they
That's
don't know,
true.
do they do nothing. So there's 24 hours in a day. And when somebody look at my stuff, I'm
Hmm.
humbled that you took 1 hour out of your time to look at what I'm doing. If that's a social media post, look at my movies, look at an ad, whatever, because you didn't have to do that.
That's
So I'm
true.
always humbled every time somebody do it. Me come on this show, you get a lot of emails. You could have said, no, I don't want John Wayne.
Hmm.
But the fact that you say yes, I'm always humbled by people who want to collaborate with me because that
Hmm.
is not a requirement in life. I am not a requirement on anybody's thing.
That's
So
right.
when somebody say yes to me, they probably said no to somebody else. So I'm always humbled by that. So if you look at something that I produce,
Hmm.
directed or written, I'm humbled by that, and
Hmm.
you know, I'm thankful. I'm
Right.
thankful because you don't have to.
That's right. And people got to remember, everybody had to start somewhere.
Yeah,
Everybody had to start somewhere. Sometimes people forget that they get success and they forget. Okay, all right, I understand you where you at, but don't forget where you came from.
that's right.
You
That's right.
should always be able to reach back and, even if a person, I just feel this is just my personal opinion, even if a
Mhm,
person only have 30,000 views on a podcast and they want you to come on. It's
mhm,
30,000 people. I understand you got a million subscribers, but
mhm.
you got 30,000 subscribers who people who don't even know, probably don't even know who you are,
That's right.
you
That
know?
is right. So
Yeah.
I try to have conversations with almost they got to be relevant subject matters of podcasts and everything. But I try
Right.
to talk to people as many as I possibly can because I have no idea who's going to look at that.
Mhm.
I have no idea who's going to connect with that. Nobody, I don't know who they know or anything like that.
That's right.
So talking to somebody and getting on a podcast, having a conversation, we just having a conversation
Right.
that happen to
Mhm.
be telling about things we do professionally or personally, but it's just a
Right.
conversation. So
Right.
I have those for free all the time.
That's right. That's
You know,
right.
I, you
That's
know,
true.
I, so I talk to people. I'm a talker, so I talk to people all the time for
Yeah.
free, walking down the street. So, yeah,
What that's a good way to look at it.
yeah.
You're
So,
right.
what's the difference with me having a conversation with you?
Right,
There's no
exactly.
difference.
That's true. That is so true. Well, John, I thank you so much for coming on the platform and oh gosh, and I like the fact that you shared so much of your personal life too, because the audience need to know that we all have our ups and downs in life. We have our failures and our wins and our losses, but that's not the end of life.
Yeah.
We all gonna learn from our mistakes, like you were just saying before. And you learn from it, and then you take that experience that you learn and do something different when you do the next thing. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing all your wonderful success and even your mental health, the things you went through during your your divorce and things of that nature. But look at you now. You got over how many streams? Say that again.
Over 10 million.
Over 10 million screams.
Mhm. And
That's
those are verified as far as that's from the statements that I get. You know,
mm-hmm.
the next quarter it'll probably be more.
Right.
But I think about that. Those are all people who spent an hour at a time, 2 hours at a time to look at it. And
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have to do that.
That's right.
So every person who looked at anything, thank you. Even
Mm-hmm.
if you don't like some of my posts or whatever case may be, I know you looked at it, so thank you very much.
That's right. That's right. And for the audience, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification button so you can be notified for the next episode. And John, thanks again. And make sure y'all watch out for his films. I watched one last night and I really enjoyed that. That daggone Ebony, she's something else.
Yes, she is. Michelle Lamb, she is really a rising star, and
Wow.
she's done a lot really since she's done the first Ebony Hill, she's done a lot of stuff. And so in a
Uh,
minute, I ain't gonna be able to afford her. So, so thank you, Michelle, for working
right.
with.
All right. Well, you take care of yourself, John, and you have a good evening.
Thank you. Stay focused.
I sure will. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.